Someone laughs at a joke that wasn't really that funny, and for just a moment, the corners of their mouth hold on a little longer than the laugh itself did. Nobody notices. It looks completely normal. If anything, it looks like someone who's doing just fine. But maybe you've done this too. Someone asks, "Are you okay?" And before you even think about the answer, you smile. "Yeah, I'm fine." That's where it gets interesting. Because sometimes a smile isn't telling people how you feel. It's telling them how you want them to feel about how you feel. Most people never learn to recognize the difference. Not because they aren't paying attention, but because this kind of smile can look completely ordinary. So why do some people smile through the moments that hurt the most? That's what this is really about. Not sadness, not weakness. Something quieter than both of those. The moment someone learns, often without consciously deciding it, that their pain feels safer when it's hidden behind an expression everyone already trusts. And by the end of this video, you might start noticing that smile in people you've known for years. And there's a real chance you'll recognize it in yourself first. Think about the last time someone asked how you were doing, and you answered with a smile before you'd even thought about the real answer. Maybe someone noticed you were unusually quiet. "Are you okay?" You smiled. "Yeah, I'm fine." The answer came so quickly that you barely had time to consider whether it was true. It wasn't necessarily a deliberate lie. It may have been an automatic response, a familiar way of making the conversation feel safe again. Psychology doesn't treat every smile in a painful moment as evidence of hidden distress. People smile for many reasons, including nervousness, politeness, social connection, or simply habit. But when smiling repeatedly appears alongside emotional discomfort, it can sometimes function as a form of emotional masking, an outward expression that helps a person manage how much of their inner experience becomes visible to others. And here's what's easy to miss. This pattern isn't always created in the moment. Sometimes it's learned over years. Imagine a child coming home upset. They've had a terrible day. They want to cry, but the room already feels tense. A parent is stressed. Someone is arguing. Nobody seems to have the emotional space to deal with another problem. So the child wipes their face. They smile. "I'm okay." Nothing dramatic happens. Nobody sits down and teaches them to hide their feelings. But the child notices something. When they look upset, everything becomes heavier. When they smile, the room gets easier. So the lesson isn't necessarily learned through words. It's learned through repetition. When I'm okay, everyone else is okay too. That doesn't mean every person who grows up in a stressful environment develops this pattern. And it doesn't mean childhood difficulty automatically produces emotional masking. Human behavior is much more complicated than that. But early experiences can influence the ways people learn to regulate emotions, seek support, and respond to vulnerability. For some people, smiling becomes part of that emotional strategy. And honestly, it's a remarkably effective strategy. A smile can reassure people. It can soften tension. It can communicate, "Don't worry about me." It can keep a conversation moving. It can even prevent questions from being asked in the first place. The problem is that a strategy that works in one environment can eventually become a habit that follows you everywhere. The nervous system doesn't sit down years later and ask, "Is this response still necessary?" The pattern can simply become familiar. And familiar responses are often the ones we reach for first. Here's where it gets more complicated than most people expect. This isn't always about hiding pain from other people. Sometimes, it's about hiding it from yourself. And this is where the story takes a different turn. Because there's a version of this behavior that's much harder to recognize. The person doesn't think they're pretending. They don't think they're performing. They may genuinely believe they're fine. And that's the part most people miss. Imagine someone receives a phone call they've been dreading. A relationship has ended. They're hurt. Their friend sits beside them and asks, "How are you holding up?" They laugh. "Honestly, I'm good." They start talking about something else. A few minutes later, they're making jokes. From the outside, they look completely composed. And if you ask them again tomorrow, they might give you exactly the same answer. Not because they're deliberately hiding something, because they may have already learned to move away from the feeling before they fully experience it. The smile comes first. The joke comes next. The subject changes. And eventually, the person may stop noticing what they're avoiding. This is why emotional suppression is different from simply not showing emotion. A person can consciously choose not to cry in public and still know exactly what they're feeling. But when avoidance becomes habitual, emotional experiences can become harder to identify, tolerate, or communicate. The person may sincerely think, "I'm just not bothered by things. I'm naturally positive. I'm the strong one. I don't really need to talk about my problems." And there may be some truth in those statements. But sometimes there's another truth underneath them. They learn to become comfortable with not looking uncomfortable. And once that pattern becomes part of someone's identity, changing it can feel strangely threatening. Because if you're always the strong one, who are you when you finally admit you're tired? There's another important point here. A smile doesn't make emotion disappear. Research on emotional suppression has found that deliberately hiding emotional expressions can have psychological and physiological costs, although those effects vary depending on the person, situation, and type of emotion being suppressed. In other words, the feeling doesn't necessarily disappear just because the face doesn't show it. It can still be experienced internally. Sometimes that experience shows up as tension, irritability, mental exhaustion, difficulty relaxing, or simply the strange feeling of being tired without understanding why. But we should be careful here. A tired person isn't automatically suppressing emotions. A person with tense shoulders isn't automatically hiding sadness. Human behavior doesn't work like a checklist. The important thing is the pattern. When someone repeatedly minimizes what they're feeling, reassures everyone around them, avoids emotional conversations, and automatically smiles whenever vulnerability appears, that's when the smile becomes psychologically interesting, because the smile may be doing more than expressing happiness. It may be helping the person regulate the situation. And maybe that's the most isolating part. The better someone becomes at looking fine, the less likely other people are to ask whether they actually are. Think about someone at work who is going through something difficult. Everyone knows they're dealing with a lot. But every morning, they walk in smiling. "Morning? How are you?" "I'm good." So eventually, people stop asking. Not because they don't care, because they've been given the same answer every time. And this creates a strange feedback loop. The person hides their pain because they don't want to burden anyone. Other people stop checking because they believe the person is okay. The person sees that nobody is checking anymore and interprets that as confirmation that they have to handle everything alone. The smile didn't create the loneliness by itself, but sometimes it can help maintain the distance that makes loneliness harder to break. At first glance, this can look like people-pleasing, or low self-esteem, or simply being a naturally cheerful person. But that assumption can miss something important. For some people, the behavior is less about making everyone happy, and more about controlling how vulnerable they allow themselves to appear. If nobody can tell you're struggling, nobody can ask uncomfortable questions. Nobody can see how deeply something affected you. And, in someone's mind, nobody can use that vulnerability against you. That doesn't mean other people actually would. It means the person's emotional system may have learned to treat vulnerability as something that needs protection. So the smile becomes a boundary, not a wall that says, "I don't care." A softer boundary that says, "Please don't look too closely." In that sense, the behavior may be less about performance and more about protection. There's a particular moment worth paying attention to. Someone brings up something genuinely painful, and there's a laugh attached. "My dad and I barely talk anymore," laughs, "but it's fine. I'm over it." Or, "Yeah, that relationship really messed me up," laughs. "Anyway, what's for dinner?" The smile isn't necessarily proof that they're secretly falling apart, but the combination of humor and painful content can sometimes serve as a buffer. Humor can make difficult subjects easier to approach. It can reduce tension. It can give someone enough emotional distance to say something they might otherwise struggle to say. And sometimes, that's healthy. Sometimes humor is simply a person's way of coping. The important question isn't, why are they smiling? It's, what happens after the smile? Does the person eventually talk honestly? Do they allow themselves to feel what they're feeling? Do they accept support? Or does the joke end the conversation completely? Because for some people, the laugh becomes the whole conversation, and the pain stays exactly where it was. So how does someone recognize this pattern in themselves? It's rarely obvious, because automatic behaviors are difficult to notice while you're performing them. Start with a simple question. Who taught me that it wasn't safe to look upset? You don't need to immediately blame anyone. You don't even need to have a dramatic answer. Just notice what comes up. Maybe you remember being told to stop crying. Maybe you remember having to stay composed while everyone else was overwhelmed. Maybe you simply learned that people responded better when you were cheerful. Or maybe you don't remember where it came from at all. That's okay. Then, notice what happens when someone shows concern for you. Do you immediately reassure them, "I'm fine. Don't worry. It's nothing. I'm okay"? And do those words come out before you've even figured out what you're feeling? That's worth noticing. Another pattern. Do compliments about how strong, independent, or put together you are feel strangely uncomfortable? As though people are describing a role you've become very good at playing, rather than describing the whole person you actually are. And here's another one. Do you feel a strange sense of relief when a difficult conversation gets interrupted? Not relief because the topic wasn't important. Relief because you no longer have to find out what might happen if you answer honestly. That moment can tell you something. Not that something is wrong with you, but that your automatic response may be doing a job. And here's the question that matters most. What if you genuinely believe you're fine? What if the smile isn't covering a feeling you consciously know is there? What if you've become so accustomed to moving past discomfort that you don't even recognize it as discomfort anymore? This is where emotional awareness becomes important. Sometimes the first step isn't forcing yourself to cry. It isn't confronting everyone who ever hurt you. It isn't suddenly becoming vulnerable with everyone. It's simply learning to pause. Someone asks, "How are you?" And instead of answering immediately, you take 1 second. You check in with yourself. "Actually, I'm having a difficult day." That's it. No dramatic confession. No breakdown. Just one accurate sentence. Because healing doesn't necessarily mean getting rid of the smile. The smile isn't the enemy. Being cheerful isn't unhealthy. Using humor isn't unhealthy. Keeping some emotions private isn't unhealthy. The problem begins when the person no longer feels that they have a choice. When smiling becomes the only acceptable response. When "I'm fine" becomes automatic. When every painful experience gets turned into a joke before the person has had a chance to understand what it meant to them. That's when the strategy may have outlived the situation that created it. And this changes the way we should look at people who always seem okay. The person making everyone laugh might genuinely love making people laugh. The cheerful friend might genuinely be cheerful. The person who smiles through difficult situations might genuinely be resilient. We shouldn't assume that every smile is a hidden cry for help. But we also shouldn't assume that a smile tells us everything. Sometimes, it tells us almost nothing. And that's why compassion matters. Not because every smiling person is secretly suffering, but because we rarely know the whole story behind someone's expression. This wasn't necessarily dishonesty. It may have been an adaptation, a way of managing difficult emotions, a way of protecting privacy, a way of keeping relationships stable. And in some circumstances, it may have been genuinely useful. The goal isn't to destroy that strategy. It's to create more choices. To be able to smile when you genuinely feel like smiling. And to be able to say, "I'm not okay today." When that's the truth, that's a much healthier kind of freedom. Because strength isn't always being able to carry everything without showing it. Sometimes strength is knowing when you don't have to carry it alone. Healing often looks much smaller than people imagine. It can look like telling one trusted person, "I'm having a hard time." It can look like sitting quietly with an uncomfortable emotion, instead of immediately turning it into a joke. It can look like noticing the automatic smile arriving, and, just once, pausing, before letting it answer for you. Not every time. Not perfectly. Just once. Because awareness usually comes before change. And sometimes the most important thing you can learn isn't how to stop smiling. It's how to recognize what you're feeling before the smile speaks for you. Maybe the smile was never really about hiding pain from the world. Maybe it was about something much smaller. A hope that if the outside looked okay for long enough, the inside might eventually believe it too. And maybe that's why these smiles can be so difficult to understand. Because sometimes the person wearing them isn't trying to fool anyone. They're simply trying to keep moving. So the next time you see someone smiling during a difficult moment, don't immediately assume they're hiding something. But don't assume the smile tells you everything either. And if you recognize that pattern in yourself, you don't need to become a completely different person. You don't need to stop being positive. You don't need to stop making people laugh. You may simply need to give yourself permission to answer honestly when honesty is safe. Because sometimes the strongest thing a person can say isn't, "I'm fine." It's, "Actually, I'm not." And that's okay. If this helped you understand yourself, or someone you know, a little more clearly today, I hope you'll join us again. Every week here on Mind Lies Explained, we look at the quiet psychology behind the things we do, without always knowing why.